The wind howled across the frozen plain, carrying flakes of sharp ice that cut against the skin like tiny blades. The alien girl crouched low, her small body bent over the tiny creature in her arms. She held it close under the thin and worn fabric. Of her cloak, her own body heat the only thing keeping it alive. The pet's fur was damp with melted snow, and its eyes were half closed. Its breathing came in shallow, weak bursts. She could not feel her fingers anymore. Her hands were red and raw, the tips almost white from the cold, but she did not move. She knew if she shifted, even for a moment, the wind would slice between them and steal the last bit of warmth. Around her, the snow stretched endlessly, hiding the land beneath a white and deadly blanket. No shelter, no fire, no sign of life, only the constant roar of the storm. She told herself not to cry. Tears would only freeze on her cheeks. But the fear pressing inside her chest was heavier than the snow that had piled on her shoulders. She had been out here for hours, maybe longer. She had lost track of time. Her people were far away now, and they were not coming back. The pet made a small sound, a weak whimper. She pulled it closer, whispering soft words in her own language. "Hold on, little one, hold on." But even her voice trembled. Her breath rose in white clouds and vanished instantly. The world was nothing but white, gray, and the sound of her heartbeat in her ears. Then she heard a distant but clear, a heavy crunch, footsteps, slow but certain. The sound did not match any animal she knew. It was not the light hopping of the snowbirds, nor the scraping shuffle of the frost lizards. This was heavier, each step pressing deep into the ice. Her heart jumped in her chest. She turned her head, but the wind blew snow straight into her eyes, stinging them. She could barely see more than a few meters ahead. The sound grew closer, louder, and then through the swirling wall of white, she saw a shadow. It was tall, too tall for her kind, wrapped in thick layers of strange, dark material. The shape moved with purpose, not like a lost wanderer, but like someone who knew exactly where he was going. The closer it came, the clearer the outline became. A broad figure, a hood drawn tight, and a faint light glowing from something in its hand. She froze, her heart pounding. Her people had told her stories of humans, dangerous scavengers, unpredictable and strange. They said humans would take what they wanted and leave you to die. She pulled the pet closer, trying to shield it from view. The figure stopped a few paces away. The wind eased for a brief moment, letting her see his face beneath the hood. It was pale from the cold, his eyes sharp but not unkind. He crouched down so he was closer to her level. His voice carried through the storm, deep and steady. "You'll freeze out here," he said. The words were in a language she barely understood, but the tone was clear. He glanced at the small creature in her arms, then back at her. He pulled something from his pack, a small metal device. He pressed a button, and suddenly a soft orange light bloomed between them. Heat, she could feel it on her skin, gentle but real. The pet stirred weakly. Lifting its head, she looked at the device, then at him, suspicion still in her eyes. "I won't hurt you," he said slowly. As if choosing each word, he moved the heater closer, then pushed a small wrapped package toward her. Inside, she could smell something warm, food. She did not take it. She only stared at him, wondering why he was here, why he was helping. The wind picked up again, carrying with it a sound that made her blood run cold, a low, drawn-out howl. It came from somewhere behind the veil of snow, deep and animal. She knew that sound. The storm beasts were hunting. The human's head turned sharply. His eyes narrowing, he stood quickly, scanning the white horizon. His hand moved to something strapped to his side, a weapon she did not recognize. She clutched her pet tighter. Her body trembled, not only from the cold now. The human looked down at her again, urgency in his gaze. "We have to move," he said. His voice cut through the wind, firm and certain. He extended a hand toward her. Waiting, she looked at his hand, then at the storm around them. The howls were closer now, more than one voice. The pet whimpered again, pressing against her chest. She knew she could not outrun the beasts alone. But trusting a human could mean another kind of danger. Her breath shook as she stared into the shadow of his hood, trying to read the truth in his eyes. Another howl split the air, and this time, it was close enough to feel in her bones. Her choice had to be made now. The girl hesitated for only a moment before taking the human's hand. His grip was warm, despite the cold air around them, strong enough to pull her up from the snow. He moved quickly, guiding her through the white storm. The wind still roared. But he seemed to know where to step, avoiding the deep drifts where her legs would sink. She kept her pet pressed tightly to her chest, feeling its faint heartbeat against her skin. The human kept glancing over his shoulder as if he could see something through the swirling snow. His other hand rested on the strange weapon strapped to his side. After a short but tense walk, he led her behind a jagged ridge of ice. The wind was weaker here, and he dropped his heavy pack onto the ground. Kneeling, he pulled out the small metal heater again. This time he placed it between them, and the soft orange glow bloomed once more. Casting light on their faces, the heat spread slowly. Chasing away the bite of the storm, steam rose from the damp edges of her cloak. The girl shifted the pet so it could feel the warmth too. The small creature made a faint chirp, its eyes opening just a little. The human unwrapped another package. From his pack, inside was something brown and round. She didn't recognize it, but the smell was warm. Like roasted grain, he broke it in half, placing one piece in front of her, the other half he placed gently near the pet's nose. She watched, carefully, wondering if it was a trick. But the pet sniffed it and began to nibble weakly. The human didn't look at her while this happened. Instead, he was adjusting the heater, making sure the heat was steady. "You were out there alone," he said, speaking slowly so she could understand. "That's dangerous." She didn't answer. Her people had told her never to speak with humans, but here she was, sitting in front of one. Accepting his warmth, he glanced at the pet again, then back at her. "It matters to you," he said softly. "So it matters to me." The words confused. Her humans weren't supposed to care about anything but themselves. That was what she had been taught since she was small. Yet here was one, giving his food and heat to a stranger and a small animal. She studied his face in the glow. His skin was pale from the cold, his eyes sharp but tired. There were lines at the corners, the kind that came from years of hardship. But there was something steady in his gaze, a quiet promise she couldn't explain. Then the sound came again. Low and long, the howl of the storm beasts. This time it was closer. The human looked up instantly. Reaching for his weapon, he stood slowly, scanning the white wall of snow beyond the ridge. His body tensed, and the heat between them seemed to fade under the weight of the moment. "How many?" he muttered, as if speaking to himself. She didn't know the exact number, but she could hear more than one voice in the wind. Oh, the growls and howls layered together, echoing in the emptiness. He turned back to her, his tone urgent now. "We can't stay here." He shut off the heater, the orange glow fading to nothing. The cold rushed back, sharp and biting. He packed the device quickly and slung his bag over his shoulder. "Follow me," he said, holding out his hand again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She rose, cradling her pet, and took his hand. His fingers closed firmly around hers. Anchoring her against the wind, they moved through the snow again. Faster now, the howls followed them, sometimes fading, sometimes coming so close they seemed just behind the next wave of snow. Her legs ached, and her chest burned from the freezing air, but she forced herself to keep up. The human never slowed. Guiding her around sharp ice ridges and over frozen slopes, he moved like someone who had done this many times before. After what felt like forever, they reached a wide patch of frozen ground where the wind was weaker. The human stopped, his eyes scanning the white emptiness ahead. She realized he was searching for something, and soon she saw two dark shapes in the snow, low to the ground, moving in slow circles. The storm beasts. They were massive, with thick white fur that blended into the snow. Only their black eyes and long teeth stood out. Their heads were low, shoulders hunched, moving like predators ready to spring. The human's grip on her hand tightened. He stepped slightly in front of her, one hand going to his weapon. She could see now that it wasn't like the plasma rifles her people used. This one was smaller, darker, with a long barrel and strange markings. He glanced back at her for a moment. His voice low, "Stay behind me, no matter what happens." She clutched her pet and nodded. The beasts moved closer, their growls rumbling through the ice. The human raised his weapon, the metal glinting faintly in the dim light. The wind paused, as if holding its breath, and in that silence, she realized something. He wasn't here to harm her. He was here to protect her. But protection, in this frozen wasteland, would not come without a fight. The white-furred shapes moved like ghosts in the snow. Their bodies were huge, their steps silent but heavy. The girl could see their black eyes glinting through the swirling frost. Fixed on her and the human, the sound of their growls rolled, low and deep, like thunder trapped under the ice. The human shifted his stance. Raising the strange weapon, the girl had never seen such a thing before. It had no glowing energy core, no humming charge. It was simple, dark metal, yet it felt dangerous in his hands. One of the beasts lowered its head, muscles coiling. The human didn't fire right away. Instead, he shouted something loud, sharp, and strange in her ears. The sound startled the beast for a second, making it pause, but the others kept moving. Closing the circle, the wind whipped harder, snow stinging her face. She hugged her pet close. Feeling its small body shiver, the human glanced at her once, his eyes telling her to hold on. The first beast lunged. A blur of white against white, the human moved faster than she thought possible. There was a sudden crack, loud and sharp, and the beast staggered back, not dead, but retreating with a loud snarl. She flinched at the sound, her heart pounding. Smoke curled from the end of his weapon. The other beasts stopped for a moment, their heads tilting. Their black eyes flicked from the human to the wounded one. The human didn't relax. His body stayed tense, his weapon steady. His breath rose in controlled bursts. She could tell he didn't want to kill them unless he had no choice. But the beasts didn't care about his restraint. Hunger drove them forward again. Another rushed in from the left, faster than the eye could follow. The human pivoted. Another deafening crack split the air. Snow exploded around the beast's legs, making it stumble and fall back. The girl realized something. He wasn't aiming to kill. He was aiming to scare them, to push them away. She had never seen that before. In her world, you killed predators before they killed you. No one risked sparing them. The beasts began to grow restless, circling slower. Their growls became uncertain rumbles. The wounded one limped back, keeping its distance. The human took a step forward, shouting again. His voice was loud and commanding. The girl didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clearly vive. For a tense moment, the beasts hesitated. Then, one by one, they turned away, melting back into the storm. Their shapes faded until the snow swallowed them completely. Silence fell again, broken only by the wind. The human lowered his weapon but didn't put it away. He scanned the area, making sure they were truly gone. Then he looked at her, his face still serious. "We have to move," he said. The girl didn't argue. She knew the beasts might return. And this place would soon be dangerous again. He led the way, his steps careful and sure. She followed closely, her pet tucked inside her cloak. The snow crunched under their boots and feet, and the cold bit at their skin. They walked for what felt like hours. The wind eased slightly. But the world remained white and empty. No landmarks, no colors, just endless snow and ice. Finally, the human stopped. He crouched, brushing snow from a strange metal surface on the ground. The girl frowned. She hadn't noticed anything there before. With a few more sweeps of his glove, a circular hatch appeared, half buried in frost. The human knelt beside it, pressing his hand to a small panel. A soft beep sounded, and the hatch unlocked with a creak. Warm air escaped in a faint breath, smelling faintly of metal and old dust. "This way," he said, climbing down into the dark. She hesitated at the edge, staring into the opening. It was deep. But there was light below, a faint glow that promised shelter. She looked at her pet. Then at the storm around them. The howls of the beasts were gone for now. But she knew they could return at any moment. Taking a deep breath, she stepped in too. The hatch climbing down carefully. The metal rungs were cold against her hands. But the air grew warmer with each step when she reached the bottom. She found herself in a small room lined with frost-covered walls. Broken equipment was scattered across the floor, but the space was dry and shielded from the wind. The human moved quickly, closing the hatch above them, shutting out the storm. For the first time in hours, the girl felt the icy air leave her lungs. He placed the heater in the center of the room. And soon the soft orange glow filled the space. The warmth spread, and she sat down near it, letting her pet rest in the heat. Its breathing was steadier now. The human pulled off his heavy gloves, flexing his fingers. His skin was red from the cold. But he didn't seem to care. His eyes moved over the room, scanning for anything useful. The girl didn't speak, but inside, her thoughts were racing. This human had fought the beasts without killing them, guided her through the storm, and now given her shelter. Everything she had been taught about his kind was breaking apart. And somewhere deep in the storm above, she knew the beasts would remember his scent. They would come again. Asterisk, the heater's glow painted the frost-covered walls in shades of gold and orange. The girl sat close to it, her pet curled in her lap. Its breathing was steadier now, a tiny chest rising and falling against her hands, for the first time since the storm began. She could feel her toes again. The bite of the cold was slowly fading from her bones. The human moved quietly around the small underground room, checking every corner. Every movement was careful, deliberate. His eyes scanned the shadows as if danger could be hiding anywhere. He tested a panel on the wall, but it stayed dead and silent. "This place hasn't been used in a long time," he said, glancing at her. She didn't answer, only watched him. Still unsure if his presence meant safety or risk, he took off his heavy outer coat, shaking the snow from it before laying it near the heater to dry. Underneath, his clothes were worn but layered. She noticed the frost in his hair, the redness of his skin. He had braved the same storm without complaint. Reaching into his pack, he pulled out a small silver container. He twisted it open, and steam drifted from inside. The smell made her stomach twist, not with disgust, but with hunger. He poured the hot liquid into a metal cup, sliding it toward her. "Drink," he said. His tone was gentle, not commanding. She hesitated, then lifted the cup. The warmth seeped through her fingers into her hands. She took a cautious sip. The taste was strange, earthy, but rich. It burned her throat at first, but then it spread through her body, melting away another layer of cold. Her pet stirred at the smell, so she lowered the cup, letting it sniff the rim. The human noticed. He reached into the pack again. Pulling out a strip of dried food, he tore a piece off and handed it to her. She broke it into tiny bits, letting her pet eat slowly, She watched him while the pet chewed. His hands were rough, scarred, like someone who had worked with tools and weapons for many years. Yet his touch when handing the food was careful. He didn't rush her or try to take the pet in her mind. The stories about humans didn't match the ones sitting in front of her now. The walls of the shelter groaned faintly. The ice above shifted, making a low, cracking sound. She flinched, clutching her pet tighter. He looked up too, his brow tightening. "That's the weight of the storm pressing down," he explained. "We're safe for now, but we can't stay here forever." The girl's eyes darted to the hatch. "The beasts," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "They might come back." Silence fell for a moment, broken only by the faint hiss of the heater. Then he took something from his pack cloth and leather. Straps. He began cutting and shaping them. She leaned forward slightly, curious, when he was done. He held out a tiny makeshift blanket. He had cut it to fit the pet's small body. The inside was lined with a soft layer. The girl's eyes widened. She took it carefully. Wrapping it around the pet, the little creature relaxed instantly, letting out a faint, content sound. She looked up at him, confusion in her voice. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because it matters to you." Those words again, simple. But they carried a weight she couldn't ignore. The heater flickered slightly as the fuel burned low. He adjusted it, then reached for a pouch in his pack. Pulling out small metal rods, "We'll need more heat if the storm lasts longer," he said. He placed the rods in the heater, and the orange light brightened again, casting a warm circle around them. Another groan came from the ice above, this time louder. A fine dust of frost drifted down from the ceiling. She glanced up. "Heart quickening, that's not good," he muttered. He moved to the far wall and began clearing old crates and equipment. Beneath them was a narrow tunnel, barely tall enough for him to crouch inside. "Where does it go?" she asked. "Deeper into the ice," he replied. "Might lead to another exit." She hugged her pet. "If the roof falls, will this tunnel keep us safe?" He looked at her directly. "It's our best chance." The shelter shuddered again, a dull boom. Echoing through the frozen walls, somewhere above, a heavy weight shifted, sending cracks spreading through the ice like spiderwebs. He grabbed his pack and slung it over his shoulder. "Come on," he said, holding out his hand. She hesitated for only a second before taking it. The heater's glow dimmed as they moved away. The tunnel swallowed them in shadows, the air colder. Here, the sound of their steps echoed faintly against the ice. Far behind them, a sharp, echoing crack rang out the sound of the shelter ceiling giving way. Snow and ice poured into the space they had just left. Sealing it forever, she tightened her grip on his hand. Her breath quick in the cold. If they had stayed even a few moments longer, they would have been buried. The human glanced back once, then forward again, leading her deeper into the unknown. Ice beneath the storm. The tunnel was narrow and uneven, forcing them to move slowly. The human went first. His body crouched low, one hand holding a small light that barely cut through the darkness. The girl followed close behind, clutching her pet to her chest. The walls of ice were close enough for her shoulders to brush against them, and they were slick with frozen moisture. The air felt different down here, colder, but still. Without the biting wind from above, every step echoed softly, making the space feel even smaller. She could hear the sound of her own breathing. Quick and uneven, they had only gone a short distance when the ground trembled beneath their feet. It was faint at first, then stronger, shaking loose small chunks of ice from the tunnel ceiling. The girl froze, her eyes wide. The human turned his head slightly, his jaw tightening. "That's the storm," he said quietly, "and maybe the beasts moving above us." Another deep, rolling vibration came, followed by a distant crack. This one was sharper, like something heavy had just broken free. The human quickened his pace. "We need to get to the other side of this tunnel," he said. The girl tried to match his speed, her boots slipping slightly on the icy floor. The tunnel curved, revealing a slightly wider section ahead. But as they stepped into it, the ice above them groaned loudly. A splintering sound echoed through the chamber. Then it happened, part of the ceiling broke apart, huge chunks of ice. Slamming down into the tunnel, the human reacted instantly. Grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the far side, the pet let out a frightened squeak. Curling tighter against her, a massive block of ice crashed between them and the way they had come, sealing the tunnel behind. The sound was deafening, and shards of ice flew in every direction. Stinging her skin, they didn't stop moving. The human pushed her forward. Guiding her through the narrow gap that remained, another loud crack split the air and more ice began to fall. The girl's legs burned from running, her lungs aching. In the freezing air, but she didn't dare slow down. Every sound from above felt like a warning that the rest of the tunnel could come down at any moment. Finally, they stumbled into a new space-unnatural ice cavern. Larger than anything she had seen before, the walls sparkled faintly with blue and silver light, the air here warmer than the tunnel. The human stopped to catch his breath, scanning the area. "We're safe for now," he said. Though his eyes still moved constantly, watching for danger, the girl turned slowly, her eyes wide as she took in the strange glow. It wasn't coming from the human's light. The cavern itself seemed to shine, the source a cluster of crystals. Growing from the far wall, they pulsed faintly, giving off both light and heat. She stepped closer, drawn to them. The warmth was gentle, wrapping around her like a soft blanket. Her pet stirred in her arms, lifting its head to sniff the air. The human approached the crystals too, touching one carefully with his gloved hand. "These could keep us alive for a while," he said, "but they might also attract things we don't want to meet." Before she could ask what he meant, a faint sound reached them, something distant, echoing through the cavern. It was not the howling of the beasts, but a steady mechanical hum. The human's eyes narrowed. "Engines," he muttered. "Someone's out here." The girl stiffened. "My people?" She asked quietly. He didn't answer right away, only looked toward the sound, as if trying to decide if it was good news or bad. The hum grew louder, accompanied by a faint metallic clank. The sound bounced off the cavern walls, making it impossible to tell the exact direction. The human turned back to her. "We should move," he said. "If it's your people, they might not be happy to see me." She hesitated, torn between hope and fear. If it was her people, they might take her home. They had left her once, and if they saw the human, they might harm him. The ground trembled again. This time, not from the storm, but from something heavy moving nearby. The human's grip on his weapon tightened. "Stay close," he told her. His tone was low but firm. She nodded, holding her pet tightly. They began moving toward a narrow passage. On the far side of the cavern, the warm glow of the crystals fading behind them. The mechanical sound continued to follow, growing sharper with every step. As they reached the mouth of the passage, the girl glanced back one last time. The crystals still pulsed gently in the dark, but now shadows moved across their light shapes. Too large to be human, whatever had been drawn to the warmth was coming, and it wasn't the storm beasts. The narrow passage twisted sharply, the walls close enough for the girl's shoulder to brush the cold surface of the ice. The human led the way, his steps steady, his light cutting just enough through the dimness for her to see his back. Her pet shifted inside her cloak, sensing her tension. They moved in silence, except for the sound of their breaths and the faint hum that still echoed faintly from somewhere behind. The girl kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting shadows to slip into the tunnel after them, but nothing came. Only the fading glow of the crystal cavern, disappearing into darkness. After several minutes, the tunnel widened into a low chamber. The air here felt different, warmer again. Not from crystals, but from something the human quickly unpacked. He set down his heater, the familiar orange light blooming in the small space. She sank to the ground near it, letting her pet stretch out and soak in the warmth. The human didn't sit right away. Instead, he walked the perimeter of the chamber, testing the walls with his gloves, tapping here and there as if checking for weakness. Finally satisfied, he returned and sat across from her. Pulling a small pouch from his pack, he poured something into a metal cup and handed it to her. The smell was rich and savory. She took a cautious sip, feeling the heat travel down into her chest. "Better?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Better," she said. The word felt strange in the human tongue, but his faint smile told her he understood. Her eyes studied him in the flickering glow. His face was tired, the lines at the edges of his eyes deep in the dim light, but there was something about the way he moved, always careful, always watching, that made her believe he had survived worse storms than this. "You saved me," she said quietly, surprising herself. His gaze met hers, steady but humble. "You saved that little one," he said, nodding toward the pet curled by her side. "I just made sure both of you stayed alive long enough for the storm to pass." She hesitated, then asked, "Why?" "You could have left me." He was silent for a moment, then replied simply, "Because if it matters to you, it matters to me." She stared at him, the same words he had spoken before. They settled deep inside her, warmer than the heater. No one from her own people had ever said such a thing, not even when she had begged them to spare her pet. Her pet made a small sound, stretching its head toward the human. He reached out his hand slowly, letting it sniff his fingers. It didn't pull away. Instead, it leaned forward, touching its nose to his hand. She blinked in surprise. Her pet rarely trusted anyone but her. A faint smile touched his lips. "Smart little one," he murmured. For a brief moment, the chamber felt safe. The storm above might rage. The tunnels might hide dangers. But here, in this small circle of warmth, there was a fragile peace. Then, a faint vibration rippled through the ground beneath them. The human's eyes narrowed instantly. He turned his head, listening. The hum they had heard before was gone, replaced by something else, a deep, slow thud, like footsteps far away, but heavy enough to shake the ice. He stood, slinging his pack over his shoulder. "We have to be ready," he said. "If it's the beasts, we can handle it. If it's something else, we move." She rose as well, tucking her pet back inside her cloak. "Something else?" she asked, her voice low. He didn't answer directly. "There are things in this ice older than either of us," he said, "and not all of them like the heat we're making." The sound came again, closer this time. The girl felt her heartbeat quicken. The human motioned for her to stay behind him as he dimmed the heater's light, plunging the chamber into a softer glow. The air grew colder instantly, but the darkness gave them cover. The thudding sound grew slower, then stopped entirely. The silence that followed was heavy, pressing in from every side. Minutes passed. She held her breath, listening. Then the sound returned, but moving away this time, fading into the deeper tunnels. The human exhaled quietly. "It's gone," he said, though his voice carried no relief. They let the heater burn a little longer before packing it away. As they prepared to move again, the girl found herself looking at him differently. He was no longer just a strange rescuer in the storm. He had become the only reason she and her pet were still alive. And though she still didn't know where they were going, she realized something. She didn't feel alone anymore. They walked for what felt like hours through the winding tunnels. Sometimes the ice above them groaned. Sometimes the walls narrowed so much she had to turn sideways to pass. The human kept leading, never slowing. His light carved a thin path through the dark, and she followed, clutching her pet close. At last, the tunnel sloped upward. The air grew sharper, colder. The human slowed, raising a hand for her to stop. He pressed his ear to the ice wall, listening. Then he moved forward, pushing aside a layer of snow that covered an exit. Blinding light spilled in, not the warm gold of the heater or crystals, but the pale silver of daylight through a storm. They stepped out onto a wide shelf of ice. The wind rushed at them, but it was weaker here, high above the frozen plains, in the distance. Cutting through the white haze, a dark shape hovered a ship. Its metal hull gleamed faintly, marked with the colors of her people. Engines roared softly, keeping it steady in the air. Her breath caught. "It's them," she whispered. The human's gaze stayed fixed on the ship. His jaw tightened. "Looks like they've been searching," he said. But his tone didn't sound like relief. She took a step forward, her heart pounding. A signal light flashed from the ship, calling. Her back, the human didn't move. He stood still, watching her, waiting. "They'll take you home," he said. "Your people, your place." She didn't answer right away. Her mind spun, remembering the day they had left her in the snow. The way they had looked at her pet with disgust. How they had decided she was not worth saving. Her pet stirred inside her cloak. Pressing closer to her chest, its warmth was a reminder of the reason she had survived at all. She turned to the human. "If I go?" "They won't let me keep it," she said. Her voice shook. "They'll say it's worthless. Just like they said about me." His eyes softened, but he didn't speak. She looked back at the ship, so close, yet so far. The thought of shelter, food, and familiar voices tempted her. But then she remembered the heater's glow in the dark. The warmth of the crystals, the steady voice that had told her, "If it matters to you, it matters to me." The signal light flashed again, sharper now, more. "Impatient, they'll want an answer," the human said quietly. She stood in the wind, torn in two. Her people were her blood, her history. But the human was the reason she was still breathing. He had fought for her without asking anything in return. He had given her trust when even her own kind had taken it away. She stepped forward toward the edge of the ice shelf. The ship adjusted its position, drifting closer. Her people would see her now. They would see the human too. One more step, and she stopped. The human's eyes met hers. Steady, waiting for her choice. Slowly, she turned away from the ship, moving back toward him. "My place is here," she said, her voice clear despite the wind. "With the one who saved me." The human didn't smile. But there was something in his gaze, respect, maybe even relief. He nodded once. "Then we keep moving." Behind them, the ship's engines roared louder. A voice through a loudspeaker called her name, demanding she return. She didn't even glance back. The human turned toward the far edge of the shelf where another path of ice led down into the storm. She followed him, the pet nestled against her. The ship's voice faded into the wind until it was gone entirely. As they descended, the world grew quieter. The storm still whispered across the plains, but here in the shelter of the cliffs, it felt less like a threat and more like a part of the land. For the first time, she let herself imagine a future not with her people, but with this strange human who had fought beasts, braved storms, and shared his warmth without hesitation. She glanced at him. "Where will we go?" "Wherever the snow stops trying to kill us," he said, and for the first time, she heard a hint of humor in his voice. She smiled faintly, tightening her hold on the pet. That day, the cold did not end. The storms would come again. The dangers of the ice would always be there. But she knew one thing: she would never face them alone again.